Let's quickly move on, quickly talk geopolitics. PM Narendra Modi is not going to ASEAN. He is going to attend the summit virtually just around the time the conversation of Russian oil coming down, private companies also buying less Russian oil is happening. Some mollification, placation of Donald Trump, or is Bharat now conscious that we have to, in this last quarter of this year, or last 2-3 months of the year, sort out the US conundrum? Otherwise, it's going to hit exports, it's going to hit business.
Yeah, look, there is a problem in the relationship. I think, the fact that the PM is not going there is a considered call that's been taken clearly at the highest level because there is a problem in the US relationship. I don't think the Prime Minister is not going because there's a problem with Malaysia or any of the other Southeast Asian countries or any of the ASEAN members, or for that matter, even with China, despite all the problems that we have with China. I think the India-US relationship is in a bit of a quagmire. And I think there are two big factors for it. One is obviously the trade deal. We are one of the major economies that hasn't still struck a deal. The other being China. And China has taken a completely different tack as to how they want to deal with the United States. We've taken a different approach. We need to wrap up that deal, and we need to wrap that deal up quickly. And the contradiction here is, I think the feeling in Delhi is, until the deal is ready for both the leaders to sign, the leadership here is not inclined to having a one-on-one personal interaction.
But isn't the word that the deal is already in place? It's White House and Trump who's being adamant.
Whereas the thinking in the White House is there is still work to be done on the deal, and it can only be resolved if the two leaders meet. So I think there's a contradiction in the way they're approaching this problem.
But the notes have been placatory. The tone from Trump vis-a-vis PM Modi and PM Modi vis-a-vis Trump, and also if you were to see slowly they're trying to de-escalate, like both trying to give each other an off-ramp. What do you think? How do you see?
Look, short term, Anand, obviously they also know that these are two important countries. They need to work together. But I think the Prime Minister, by not going to ASEAN, is also suggesting that, look, strategic diplomacy is not about showmanship. You don't have to be prancing around on a stage and shaking hands all the time, right? We have other priorities. And at this moment, there are elections, etc. It's not the first time. He's done it once earlier also. Also, there have, of course, when he does travel, then many people in the opposition say, look, he spends more time, doing all this schmoozing and handshaking than he does governing. So I'm not getting into the politics here, but I think fundamentally there is no point in being talked into something because Modi knows that he's not temperamentally the type of person who's going to get into a Zelensky-like squall with Trump. That was so unseemly, and Trump has made that an imprimatur really of his diplomacy, getting into these conversations with people, putting them down. I don't think Modi is wanting to put himself in that position. So he's like, okay, let some things come through. If there was a breakthrough, which was imminent, and all you needed to do was to sign off, I'm sure he would have gone. Yeah. They would have had a bilateral. Yeah. It would have been a big deal on the sidelines. They would have signed. I think he's letting things wait and watch. I think there's also a very important message here where he is beginning to also diversify India's diplomatic outreach. Yeah. I don't think we are only going to now over-leverage on one country or two. I think geopolitics globally has changed. You've seen Britain. Britain was one of the first to have actually got out of the block and alignment mode through Brexit. Many people had a problem with that. Yes, there'll be short-term pain for Britain, but I think over a period of time, it has made itself strategically more autonomous in the choice of equations. And I think that is something that it did because of their own constraints. And I think India is going to also sort of deleverage its associations with different countries. So even this overbearing dependence, let's say, in the short term on Russian oil, because the prices were so great, even that's going to be recalibrated, so to speak. I think that we've really realized that we even need to diversify our oil pool. And if you've realized, constantly the Prime Minister has made one trip after the other or invited leaders from the Gulf. Yeah. So there's been a huge push diplomatically. And guess what that is translated into? Yes, there has been, of course, a blowback because of this trade and tariff fracas with the US. But a lot of that has got sort of mitigated because Russia has decided to buy more Indian or open its markets to Indian products. So is the Middle East, and so is to some extent China. So we've kind of hedged our bets. And I think that's really going to be the future. India doesn't really want to be corralled into one particular group, which Trump wants. Trump really wants
either
everyone
you're
to
with
be
me
lined
or
up.
you're not without me.
Yeah. I mean, that's ridiculous.
And the other thing is,
It
I think
doesn't work that way.
somewhere the Prime Minister's message to Donald Trump is that you don't speak to me like you're speaking to some of the other heads of state, or you behave with Shahbaz Sharif the way you did that, you don't do that with me. So there is a certain level of respect you need to maintain. I think somewhere Trump also realizes that he's also looking for an off-ramp, if I may say. But whether or not it happens in the next few days or perhaps in this month, the exporters are very carefully watching. Also, those who are importing and who have paused their orders in the US, they are also watching. The American consumer will be impacted. And there's, of course, oil imports from private oil companies, but European nations will be impacted. So there's a lot going around. Thing is, we've run out of time.
Have you noticed that 3 or 4 of those guys who were making anti-India statements have suddenly piped down?
They've all piped down. The attack dogs have been asked to sit down and wait for a bit. But I don't know if they're going to be unleashed or whether or not we're going to have perhaps some amount of
You can't tell with Trump.
ironing of the creases. You can't tell, but he's not all that, bluster somewhere. There seems to be some method to his madness. Some people would say.
At least with China, he's all...
Yeah, because, see, only the strong will be spoken to, and you got to deal with equals. That's how,
right.
deal as equals. Otherwise, there'll always be this master-subordinate equation psychologically. So we've got to get up there as a nation too. And I think that's the message the Prime Minister is sending to everyone. Thank you, gents. Thank you. We've run out of time. Thank you for watching this edition.